Alrighty, I think we're live. As per usual, I always have a couple seconds where I'm not sure whether we're live or not, but I can definitely say we are now. So happy Wonder Wednesday, everyone. It's great to see you here again. If you're watching us from LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, wherever we're streaming from, I would love to see your comments in the chat. Come and say hi and let me know where you're joining us from. If this is your first time here, we are Floxy's community, an international community for women in UX UI design and Webflow development. And we get together here every Wednesday, or we try to be here every Wednesday for what we like to call our Wonder Wednesdays. And without further ado, today we're going to talk about the mistakes or what not to do when you're approaching your portfolio in 2024, your UX portfolio. So let me share my screen. Here we go. So what you can see here, this is our metaverse on Gather Town, where we built our virtual headquarters, and this is where we basically our community lives. We have our library, our co-working space that you can see me in right now, and I'm going to join our auditorium, which is where our events happen every Wednesday. Elam, great to see you from YouTube. I'm so pleased that you're here. All right, so I can see lots of Floxies already in the room, so let's join the space. Hello, everyone. Happy Wonder Wednesday. I was just announcing, I was opening up the stream, and I always love that moment where I step outside of the room and I'm back, and there's like all these little avatars and names popping around. It's great to see. I know that, we were just saying, Joe, we were just chatting behind the scenes. We always wait for about 5 minutes, making sure that everyone makes it here on time. I know there's traffic in the way in the metaverse, so we have to wait for a couple minutes. But it's great to have you here again with us, Joe. For anyone who hasn't met Joe in the past, Joe Formica is the founder at Bitesize UX. He's an expert designer, educator from New York. He's been working with startups, enterprise, anything, and today he's dedicating most of his time teaching young designers like us, or just like teaching anyone really, and equipping them with the skills that we need to keep on being on top of everything in 2024. So we've been having a few events in collaboration with Bite Size UX. And so, Joe, you were one of our first speakers. The first event was with you, and you told us all about the new trends coming up in 2024. We talked about the state of design today and what it will look like in the future. And then we had one of your amazing instructors, Kola, who helped us kind of realize what kind of designers we are today. She helped us identify our skills, and then we worked last week. We worked on how to shape our resume in the best way. And so I think today we are going to be tackling what not to do in 2024 when it comes to your portfolio. I know that we were just saying that one of any designer resolution for the new year is always to decorate, refine, and reshape or rebuild their portfolios. And so I would love to hear from you. Yeah, what do you think about it? And is that more or less what we're going to do today?
That is what we're going to do today. Yeah, we're going to talk about portfolios, which is, I recognize, usually not the most fun aspect of being a UX designer, and probably why, if there's anyone here, probably why you didn't, not the reason that you got into UX design in the first place, but obviously a super important part of being a designer, breaking into a job. If that's something you're trying to do in the new year, then your portfolio is going to be an important part of it, and usually a pretty challenging part of it as well. So we're going to talk about portfolio stuff. I'll get into that in a second, and basically cover some common mistakes, some things that are relatively easy to fix, some things that are important kind of as currently and going forward that hiring managers want to see in a portfolio. And I think, hopefully the real takeaway from this for everyone is some actionable takeaways for your own portfolio. We'll talk about it, but a lot of portfolio advice and YouTube videos and, Medium articles out there are kind of vague, right? You're looking at them trying to learn if you're doing your portfolio right, if it's good, if you have all the right stuff in there. And there's a lot of advice out there, but it's not always when you actually go down to sit and work on your portfolio, sometimes you think, yeah, that advice sounded good when I read it or watched that video, but how do I actually apply it? So we're talking portfolio stuff, and I guess more importantly, finding some ways in the next hour for everyone to apply some of this to your own work that will make a really, really big difference in what you're doing with your portfolio going forward. So I guess to start it then, in the chat, wherever you're checking in from, I would love it if you could share, you could check in your name, where in the world you're checking in from today. But most importantly, what I would love for you to drop in is your biggest portfolio challenges. I want you to think about, when you go to sit down and work on your UX portfolio, create a new case study, put finishing touches on it, what are some of the challenges that come up? These could be, technical challenges of, oh, I don't like the website builder that I'm using to do this. It could be some of the more psychological challenges like, oh, I feel like a beginner. I have imposter syndrome. I have analysis paralysis. Oh, I just got to fix this one last thing and then I'm going to send it out on my applications. Um, I've heard a lot of them and experienced a lot myself, but I want to hear those from you. So drop those in the chat, as many as you want. We'll start with this as kind of a vent session, just getting it out there. What are the things that you struggle with on your portfolio? So I'll give you some time to drop those in the chat, and we'll take a look at them and talk through those in just a little bit. So
Great. I forgot to bring my
length and data.
we did this last week with Cola where she was like, "Oh, we have 2 minutes," and then I was like, "Oh no, I forgot my ukulele to do background music." Don't worry. Don't worry, everyone. I'm not gonna pull out any instruments. It's just like a bit of fun. But I can see already there's answers in the chat. So our Floxies girls are always very responsive, so we don't have to entertain you with cringy ukulele music in the background.
Well, I would not mind that at all. But we do have some good answers in the chat. Ashley, length of data and case study, restrictions of Canva to one-page scroll. Um, Niero, based in London, biggest challenge is figuring out relevant UX tools to include for each case study and project. Nice. All right, so you can keep putting those in. If you think of them, drop them in the chat. We're going to take a look at them in just a second. And that's going to be an important starting point to kind of get it out there before we get into some of the solutions and the ways to get past some of those challenges. My name is Joe. Claudia did a great introduction, so I'm not going to take very long on my intro, but I am a designer, founder of Bitesize UX, and a senior instructor at General Assembly here in New York. And I guess more important than my qualifications as a designer and my experience in that related to today, I had to add this slide in. I think that I've reviewed more UX, specifically junior UX portfolios than any human being on earth. I'm not sure. I can't back that up with any stats. I'm probably top 10, if not if not up there at the top. But in addition to teaching, designing, and just working with on a lot of different products over the years, I've also spent a lot of time helping new designers and struggling with it on my own when I was getting started out regarding the portfolio. I took a little screenshot here of my calendar. This is from a couple years ago. By the way, it says my connection's bad. I have good Wi-Fi, but let me know if I'm like breaking up at all. Cool. If not, someone let me know in the chat and I'll check it. This is a screenshot from my calendar a couple years ago where I would do one-on-one meetings at General Assembly here in New York with students who graduated the immersive program. And basically my role was to help them, give them one-on-one guidance for these half-hour meetings with things related to not as much, design tips and learning UX, but more so career related stuff. So I would do mock interviews with students, review their resumes, and while there was, a little bit different requests from everyone, the vast majority of the time, 95% of the time, I was doing portfolio reviews with these graduates of the program. So I was doing, 8, 10 sessions every Friday, did that for several years and saw a lot of portfolios. And a lot of the same things coming up. So that's really why I created this talk today and an upcoming class I'll talk about for the full day, because not all you don't need a one-on-one session to get that advice that's going to improve your portfolio. In some cases, sure, there was some more personalized feedback I was giving, but in several years of looking at tons of portfolios, I realized that a lot of the advice that I'm giving is the same to these students and new designers. And more importantly than that, it's advice that it doesn't take a whole lot of time to put into action or to do, but can really make a big difference in the experience of creating your portfolio, taking some of the stress out of that, and also having a good, effective portfolio. Little things that can make a really big difference. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. Um, Laura hates writing case studies and getting all the information together. Yes, that's a common one. We'll talk about this later, and I'll share, Tom can share the link to it, but we have a full day workshop called Create a Standout UX Portfolio. This is coming up. I forget when our next date is for this one. Um, I'll check that out. But it's a full day workshop where you will actually make huge improvements to your portfolio. I'm leading that class, and we provide templates, like a whole deep dive into portfolio stuff. So if you're I'll mention it more at the end and share some promo codes, but that is something we have upcoming. I'm going to share some of the big points from that day-long class, but if you want to make some serious progress on your portfolio beyond today, this is definitely a good one to check out. And Tom just put all the info on that in the chat if you want to check it out, and a promo code. All right, I'm going to skip this stuff because we all know what to do here. Let's talk about portfolio struggles. So I'm looking in the chat here, and I'm seeing a lot of portfolio challenges that I've seen before and I've experienced before. I'll show you this. From the past time we've done this workshop and this class, I created this FigJam board for exactly what we just did in the chat, and I have everyone put their portfolio struggles on Post-it notes in here. And this is just from the last. We had to make another board for it because it got too crowded in there.
Why
So
is it such why is it such a struggle, Joe? To
why is it such a struggle? That's a
Yeah.
great question, Claudia. Clearly, it's a struggle, right? Every designer struggled with it, and I can see a lot of the reasons in here are ones that I'm very familiar with. It is tough to create your UX portfolio, right? So I want to acknowledge that, and that's why I wanted to get everyone to put their challenges in the chat and just kind of get them out there. It is hard, right? And there are a lot of challenges that come along with it. So if you're thinking you're the only one who's having a struggle to get your portfolio where you want it to be, I promise you, you're not. Claudia, to your question, some of the reasons that the portfolio is such a challenge and such a thing for designers. I think the first biggest reason is conflicting advice. And I kind of talked about this a couple minutes ago, but we see there are tons of articles and YouTube videos out there giving advice on portfolios. And we see throughout those, even sometimes in the same article or video, a lot of conflicting advice. We see things like show the details of every step in your process, show your work, show the behind the scenes stuff, give us all of the details of your problem solving process. And then, maybe in the same article or in another video that's giving advice, we see something totally conflicting, right? But don't make your hiring manager, whoever's reading it, read too much. Keep it easy to scan. Don't make it too dense. And this can kind of, this does not create any clarity or clear action items when you go to work on it. So we have conflicting advice. We have then all the other psychological aspects of doing a portfolio, especially as a junior designer, if you're making a career transition. And I think the biggest one that I see and have definitely experienced is the imposter syndrome. The portfolio is an important aspect of your application and career and getting a job. So you have this thing that you're not super clear on, you're getting conflicting advice about, and then you also at the same time know this is how other designers, hiring managers are going to be judging you as a designer. So I think that adds a lot of pressure to that, especially for beginners and people who are new and not really sure if their portfolio is looking how it's supposed to look or having the effect that they want it to. And then kind of the sister to conflicting advice. We get a lot of vague advice on portfolios. Things like this, tell a story, right? You can see that guarantee in just about every article I've read about portfolio tips. We hear this. In reality, it actually is good advice. You do want to tell a story with your portfolio. But again, the common theme being that when you actually go to sit down and work on your case studies, this advice sounds great, but not really super easy to put into action, right? So we have all these factors that make the portfolio a challenge. And I realize it's ironic that I'm giving portfolio advice here, but I'm also kind of doing that as someone who's seen a lot of the advice out there and a lot of the things that new designers struggle with. So here's kind of the bottom line, right? Your portfolio is really important, right? I don't want to downplay like, oh, don't stress, it's not a big deal. Your portfolio is kind of the main thing that a hiring manager anywhere in the job application process that they're going to be using to see the work you've done and really evaluate your problem solving ability as a designer. It's not the only thing, right? Resumes, interviews, like tons of other factors in there, but want to acknowledge, your portfolio is important. It's going to be a big piece of the puzzle in terms of taking the next step in your career. But on the other side, it doesn't have to be overwhelming, stressful, or confusing. And I think all those factors that I just mentioned kind of contribute to that sense of it being this big, scary thing that you have to do that's very unclear. It is important, but it can be more straightforward and actionable than the experience that maybe a lot of us have had with it. And that's really what we're going to get into today. All right, I'm going to skip this part, and we'll see if we have time for it at the end. We'll do it, but I want to make sure we have time for our big tips here. So correcting a few common mistakes can totally change the way you present your work. I think the biggest challenge with the portfolio for junior designers, or the kind of the root cause, is that a lot of new designers don't have experience articulating their design decisions. As a professional designer, you're doing this all the time, right? You're talking about your work, you're doing morning stand-ups with your team, you're doing presentations to the company you're working for. You are explaining your work a lot as a professional designer. And the portfolio is really not any different than that. You're not talking through it. You're not presenting it maybe as a slideshow, although you could. But it's still the same idea, right? It's still meant to effectively communicate your design decisions, show your ability as a designer, and convince people that you can, since you solved this problem and were able to use this process to build another product, that you can solve other problems that are coming your way. And so the things that we're going to talk about today are a couple common mistakes that and some ways to fix them, obviously, that you can implement that are definitely going to help in your portfolio. But I think more importantly, the bigger goal of helping you improve how you talk about and articulate your design decisions. All right, so these are the mistakes that we're going to be talking about and looking at some examples for. Again, I said these are ones that I see all the time. These are mistakes that I've made early in my career when doing case studies and portfolios, and ones that are not super challenging to fix, but will have a big effect on your case studies. So we have no context, we have the bootcamp book report, and we have takeaway overload. So we're going to go through all of those with some examples, some activities where I'm going to ask you to chime in on the chat and give your answers to them, and some ways to find takeaways to apply this to your own case studies. All right, so let's start with the first one, which is no context. I would say this is at the top of the list of portfolio mistakes that I see in terms of how common it is, and also one of those that with a little work will make a huge difference overall in your case studies. Basically, with no context, this is what you have to remember. That can be very difficult for us as designers, but an important thing to remember when you're doing a case study. Nobody knows anything about your project. The hiring manager who's clicking on your case study from an application or from LinkedIn, the lead designer who you sent it to for feedback or to review, Outsiders going into your case studies and looking at these projects, they don't have any idea what they're about. They're going in totally cold to them. And that's very different than us as the designer who knows everything about this project, right? We've been working on it for 6 months, a year. We know every interview we did, every usability test that we did, all these twists and turns of the project. So it's a little hard to separate that sometimes, or it's easy to zoom in too much, but important to back up a little bit and realize that the person, even if they have UX design experience looking at your portfolio, they don't know what your project is about. So I took the Jesse meme here of kind of this is what it looks like as designers, right? We're talking about all of our deliverables and jargon and complicated stuff and all these intricate processes we did to solve the problem. And then we have our hiring manager. It's like, wait a second, what are all these diagrams? What are all these sketches and drawings? Like, back up a little bit before you get into so much detail about this stuff. So basically with this one, how you lead your reader into the case study sets the tone for everything else. And that's what we're going to talk about fixing here and improving with our first mistake. Good way to think about it is, how can someone understand, an outsider, right? Let's think of our hiring manager who's clicking on our project. How can they understand all of these complex deliverables and diagrams that we're showing in our portfolio if they don't even know what the project is about, right? As I think one of the other big challenges of a UX portfolio is that it's complicated, right? We're showing things that are not really easy for an outsider to immediately grasp. Let's say you have a photography portfolio, right? That is pretty simple. You might write a little bit about your photography, or where you took a photo, but overall someone can look at that and they can evaluate your ability as a photographer, whether they like it. With UX design, it's a little trickier than that. We have user flows, customer journey maps, sketches, this whole pile of stuff that we're kind of unloading on our reader, and they're not really easy to kind of sift through and understand. So the idea here is, how can someone, we want to make sure that we're giving them, our reader, an intro and really the context that they need, so that when we do show them user flows and all these deliverables and kind of the details of what we're doing in this project, that they're going to make sense, right? And that they're going to appreciate the value and the our problem solving ability as designers, because they feel comfortable about what the project was about and what our goals were. So I like to think of giving context and kind of the intro to your case studies really as like an abstract for, or a summary for, a research study. If you look at scientific research studies, they're long, they have a lot of charts and graphs and statistics and citations, kind of similar to our case studies as designers. They're dense, right? But most good research studies have an abstract or a summary like this one that gives you kind of the overview of what you're going to be seeing, what the team studied across this study, and allows you to get kind of the context that you need on the overall goals of the project, or what they were trying to solve, before getting into all of those details. All right, so let's take a look at some examples of this. What we're talking about here are the way that we're introducing a project or a case study. So this could be the thumbnail on your homepage, right, where you have a little summary of it, and a user can click on that and see the full case study. Or kind of at the top, and I'll pull an example in a sec, at the top of your case study, where you're showing like a big image and a title and kind of the overall like first thing that they're reading in the case study. That's what we're talking about here. So this is the common mistake that I see with no context, and a good example right here. We see Beat Burner, the logo, and a description of the project. This is a collaborative cross-platform audio streaming application. That sounds, I guess, kind of impressive or technical, but it's not really effective at what we're trying to accomplish here, which is giving our audience, our reader, a high-level, simple understanding of what this project is all about before we get into the details. You could probably figure out what a collaborative cross-platform audio streaming application is or have an idea of what that might do. But it's too vague, it's too technical, there's too much jargon in there, and it doesn't really set up our reader with the proper context. This is a much better example here with the same app or example project. Beatburner is an app that helps fitness instructors create awesome playlists. And then instead of showing the logo for it or something that's just kind of vague, we're seeing a screenshot here that clearly shows some kind of, group workout class. There's a playlist. There's this little audio player here with sound waves. Just this, I mean, if you compare these two, right? This versus this second one is going to give the reader a much better, even though it's still really simple, understanding of what this project is all about. And that is going to make a huge difference to have that context as they start going into some of the more detailed, complex parts of your project.
And it's a user
So the
persona
way
as
I like to
well,
think about
isn't
this,
it?
yeah, go ahead, Claudia. Sorry.
It's a user persona as well, because the previous one, just by looking at it, I was like, okay, maybe if I was a user, I was like, okay, maybe I don't identify with this app. Maybe it's not for me because I'm assuming it's for composers, music makers, DJs, and then the next screen was like, oh, actually, a fitness instructor can use this. So immediately you can see there's a user persona behind the case study as well.
Totally. Who it's for, right? But keeping it really simple like this is going to set the expectation for the reader of your case study. Okay, I know what I'm going to be looking at. I don't know all the details. I'm not seeing all the screenshots right at the beginning, but I get the basic idea there's going to be an app for fitness instructors to create playlists for their class. And just having that is going to make their understanding of all the other aspects of your case study and who it's for so much easier for them to grasp. The way I like to think about this is that a 10-year-old would have a basic idea of what this app is about. So when you're including a screenshot and a quick summary of your project, right at the top of your case study, we want to go super, super simple, like this example. Now, a 10-year-old might not literally be able to understand every single one, right? We don't have to, you might be working on a complex product that's just a little over their head. But I like to use that as an example to really get everyone here thinking about simplicity, right? High level overview. How would you explain what this app does to your mom or your brother or your sister? That's what we want to start out with, because if we don't establish that early on in the case study, everything else is going to be very confusing for our readers, and they're not going to be able to see and appreciate the good design decisions that we made throughout. All right, so we're going to do a little example with this one, and I'm going to ask you, we'll do a 2-minute exercise here, and I'm going to ask anyone, wherever you're watching in from, to put your answer in the chat. So I picked this website as just kind of an example for this one. I found it and I thought it looked kind of cool, so we're going to use it. And I just put it in the chat here in GatherTown. So this site is an app for drawing floor plans for, I guess, architects and interior designers. And this kind of gives you the basic idea of what this does. And we're going to use this as our example and try to improve the introduction to this case study. So you can imagine that you were a designer for Rayon. You've completed a project designing this product, and now you're making a case study for it in your own portfolio. So we have rayon.design, our logo here. Not super descriptive, right? Screenshot would probably be a little bit better. But what I want to focus on is improving this. We have Rayon, the name of our app, and then we have kind of a similar description to the Beatburner one we just saw. A collaborative, responsive, cross-functional space planning tool for professionals to contribute across devices and platforms. Just like the Beatburner one, I guess it's technically true, right? But there's a lot of jargon in there. It's not super easy to explain, and it's not giving our reader the context that they need to jump into all the details of our design. So I'm going to leave this up on the screen, and I want you to, I'll put 2 minutes on the clock, and I want you to just put an answer in the chat with your revised description of this sentence down here. Can you write this description to provide more useful context about the project Keep it simple. What is it? Who is it for? What was the focus of the project? We're making some of this up, obviously, since we didn't work on it. But I want you to practice getting out of that jargon, vague, confusing description and into something a little bit more simple. And I put the link to the site in the chat here if you want to check that out and see if you can get some ideas for it. So let's put 2 minutes on the clock over here and drop your answer in the chat. There should be 1 or 2 sentences, and I want you to take this example and really simplify it. All right, go for it, and we'll check out some of the answers after you're done.
Ready, steady, go. I also share the link with people that are watching us on LinkedIn and YouTube. So feel free to interact and do the exercise as well. Drop your descriptions in the chat on your social media because we want for these events to be as interactive as possible. This is your opportunity for you to learn and get better. So the more you contribute in a way, the more active you are, the more you learn. I think me and Joe both really share this kind of hands-on uh, theory and practice that we both believe that by doing you learn a lot faster and better. So do do follow along and get involved. It's for your own sake.
Totally. Yeah, put your answers in here, and when you go back to work on your own portfolio, you'll have some great examples to look at and revise or improve some of those intros to your own case studies too. All right, we got some good answers in here.
We've got a
We got
couple
another
coming
minute,
through.
so
Yeah,
drop them in, and we'll take a look in just a sec.
nice. Keep them coming. Let me see. Yeah, and I liked your tip, Joe, about being kind of concise and like straight to the point and really optimize what you're working on. Because I could see one of the comments from our LinkedIn was from Nikita, like she struggles with how long a case study should be. Just like some portfolio have really long case studies and they get a job, and then some others don't have such a long case study and they still get a job. So which one is it? So this is
Yeah,
great. Keep it
we'll
simple.
talk about that in one of our next tips. But all these things are going to all these improvements in these exercises we're doing here. These are all going to contribute to the same thing, which is regardless of how long how much scrolling there is, the case study is going to be complete and still feel engaging, easy to read for the audience. So I know that's the most common question, the balance of how much to include and how much to leave out, and we will talk about that. But all of these are going to contribute to making your case study, finding that good balance of making it easy for someone to digest, but still complete, still showing all the stuff that needs to be there. All right, we got some great responses in here. Create quick floor plans for anyone, anywhere, anytime. Nice. Shivi said, helping designers and architects create floor plans collaboratively. Rayon, collaborative floor plans made easy. Network and create new spaces together with Rayon. Fast and responsive collaboration for designers on floor plans. I would say that any of these, at least the ones in the chat here, are better than what we have for this one. All of those, even if I have no experience, which I don't, with floor plans or architecture or interior design, as an outsider looking at this case study, I would have a good idea of what to expect. What am I going to be looking at? What types of functionality am I going to be seeing here? Who are the users? This is going to set you up and set your reader up for success way more. If you have something like this, they're going to be lost once they get into those details. Here's what I came up with for it. Rayon, I did a little longer one here, but Rayon's a collaborative space design software for people working on floor plans every day. And then I added kind of a bonus here that you can also do in your own projects, which was the focus of your project. We focused on designing features that allow people to draw, share, and work together on floor plans from anywhere. Just seeing this, it's going to give the reader some great context before you start introducing all the behind the scenes stuff. And you can see what a difference too, just including the screenshot makes, right? Where it's like, okay, I get kind of what this is. It looks like Figma with floor plans and there's a bunch of arrows zooming around and people collaborating on it. So this is, we're going to go on to our next one in just a second, but I wanted to do this first because this is great, actionable, uh, simple action item for anyone here who's looking at their own portfolio or maybe in the process of building it that wants to make a quick but really impactful improvement. Go back, look at how you're introducing your projects, look at the things you have on the header, on the tiles, on your homepage, the high level summaries, and if they are super vague, if they're including a lot of jargon, if they don't really give great context about what this project was about, let's say to a 10-year-old or a non-designer friend, this is something you can go back and do that will not take very long, but will make a really big difference in how all of the work after that is perceived by your audience. All right, so one thing that we do in our full day class is anchoring your portfolio story. So this is a great start. We also talk about how to set up the beginning and end of your case study and do kind of more of a deep dive into the how to set up your case study, how to outline it, and really basically just fill in the blanks on it. So Tom shared that link to our one day workshop coming up. And like I said, I'll talk a little bit more about that later. There are some other things you can do, but this is really a great first step and a simple one that will make a big impact. All right, let's go to our next common mistake and how to fix it. I call this one the bootcamp book report or the bootcamp checklist. Basically, what I mean by this is a case study that looks like a big checklist of UX things. First, we did research, then we did synthesis, then we did sketching, then we did testing, then we did interviews, then we did a hi-fi, then we did mid-fi. And I've seen so many portfolio projects like this from bootcamp students and outside of boot camps that have a lot of material there, right? They have a lot of, they're hitting on all the right UX stuff, things that you would want to include in a case study. The problem with it is it feels like a checklist where they're listing and showing a bunch of deliverables and things that they made over the course of the project, but not really talking about why, right? And not really explaining why they use this tool or this method at this point in the process to help solve the problem or create a better solution. So kind of my takeaway when I see things like this, and I'm sure other lead or experienced designers out there, um, when they see something like this, or we see something like this, we think, yes, you can do a user flow. You can put boxes and arrows that connect. It looks great. But do you know when to use a user flow to solve a problem? Or how did this user flow help get you to the next stage in your design or to a better solution? And a lot of times the information, if it's not there for us to get or provided by the designer and the case study, we're going to be unsure about that, right? Yes, they can make a nice looking sketch, but do they know when to use sketching to solve a problem and when to kind of pull it out of their toolbox as a designer? So the goal for the bootcamp book report to improve it is to go beyond just kind of, listing out all of the stuff that you did and really talk about why you did it. We also see stuff like this in the same vein of this mistake where it's very general, right? Next, I did a competitive analysis to analyze competitors. Next, I did interviews to interview or to talk to potential users. Next, we did usability tests to test the usability of our site. These are super general. They could apply to any project. And as a reader, a hiring manager, a designer who's looking at your case study, I'm going to kind of have the same takeaway, right? You know how to make this thing, you know how to do a user flow or a nice looking wireframe, but it doesn't tell me anything about your problem solving process. So the whole goal here is when you're showing your work or introducing a new part of the process, not just to say what you did and have a big list of stuff, but to talk about why you did it and how it helped you solve the problem. So this is a really great format to, I'm looking in the chat, right? So Ashley said feeling
Yeah, me
called out
too.
here and
Yeah,
saying
I was just reading
that,
those comments. I was like, oh.
yeah, totally. And this is not a call out. There's a reason why I have this in my top 3 mistakes, right? Everyone makes these mistakes. I made these mistakes. So if you're seeing this in your case studies, you're going to be able to improve it. It's not a you are not the only one who has this kind of style. The difference is that you're here today, so you can find out some ways to fix it and improve it. So I don't want to feel like I'm calling anyone out, but it's super common, and as you'll see, pretty easy to fix and make some big improvements with. All right, so if you're looking at your case study and you're kind of seeing the bootcamp book report of just a bunch of lists of stuff, this is a really helpful format to use to kind of rephrase that. And I'm going to show some examples and give you another one to work on in just a second. Instead of saying, next we did user flows, we want to start by saying what we wanted to learn or achieve at this part in the process. So we did user flows. So for example, we wanted to create the most efficient path for a user to create and launch their first class. So we did a user flow to outline the steps that need to happen for them to do that. That is going to be much more effective and give the reader some confidence that you actually had a reason for doing the user flow and that you know how and when to use it to move your product and your design forward. So this one on the left, we did quick sketches to come up with solutions. Too general, right? That's just what sketching is. It doesn't tell me anything about your problem solving process or that you know when to use sketches. It's just kind of there and not really helping you and maximizing what you're showing in your case studies. This one on the right is much better. We wanted to explore different layouts for our user profile. So what were we trying to achieve? Exploring different layouts for a user profile. So we sketched out some screens with different layouts and hierarchy of key information. It's not super dense. It's not, 10 paragraphs of description here, but the key difference is that on the left, it's just too general and saying, hey, we did it. We did this UX thing. And on the right, it's saying we had a goal, right? We were trying to experiment with different layouts for this screen we were working on, and we use sketching as a method to do that. Another example here, I made this might be a little hard to see, but I made this a little more detailed. We did a usability test of the filters, way too general, right? But we might say we wanted to test the activity filters to see if they contained the right criteria. Here, I'll show this example here. I was looking at a TripAdvisor. So if you had this and you were talking about the filters that you designed, this is going to be too vague. We did a usability test of the filters. Again, doesn't really tell me anything about your process or problem solving ability. Too general. Much better one. We wanted to test the activities filter to see if they contain the right criteria to help users find events that met their interests. That's what we were trying to achieve. So what did we do? We conducted 10 usability tests where we observed how participants use filters to narrow down events to meet their preferences. Much, much better here. And as a reader, I feel confident that this designer knows how and when to use usability testing at a point in the process to solve a problem. Whereas here, too general for me to understand that. All right, we're going to do another example with Rayon. We'll keep the same example going on here. So I want you to imagine, again, that you're a designer for Rayon who did a case study about your design work, working on this space planning platform. And I want you specifically to imagine that you're talking about a feature that you worked on with comments, right? So allowing architects and people collaborating on these floor plans to comment, leave feedback, and you documenting your process of designing that, and specifically testing it. So if we're saying we want to document the usability testing that we did for this comment feature that we designed. In red here, I have our too general example. Next, we did usability testing on the comment feature. Not enough, right? What I want you to fill in is a new and improved version of this. We wanted to learn or achieve this, right? So I want you to be specific. What were you trying to learn when testing out the commenting feature? So we did usability tests, and again, be specific there. Don't just leave it at, we wanted to test it, so we did tests. what were you trying to learn or achieve in these usability tests? What were you trying to find out? And can you be a little bit more specific with what was included in that usability test to help get you those answers? So this is what you're going to fill in. I'll give another 2 minutes to do this. It should be relatively short. And you can make some of this stuff up, right? Again, we didn't work on this for real, so you can make some leaps in describing these fictional usability tests we did. But most importantly, I want you to get more specific than this one and talk about what you were trying to achieve, the why behind the usability test that you did on this commenting feature. So let's go 2 minutes on the clock, and same thing as last one, put your answer in the chat and give this one a rewrite following the format that we have here, and we'll check them out after. All right, go for it.
Ready, steady, go. It was so nice to look at that sort of embedded screen that you had of that feature. It just made me, I think I'm just made for things like Sims and Gather Town. Maybe I should start designing floors as well. It was giving me such a calm feeling to look at that
Yeah,
plan.
I know. It looks kind of cool, right?
So neat. Is it an actual company?
Yeah, yeah. I just found it randomly and just thought I looked on Product Hunt for some stuff for a good example, and I thought
It's a great
I
use
was trying
case.
to find one that most people probably don't have experience with using, right?
Hmm.
So we could simulate that same aspect of a hiring manager who has no idea what your project is about. So this is
Really
what I came
nice.
up with.
Look how satisfying this map is.
Yeah, right. Seeing everyone moving around, making stuff.
Maybe we should make one for websites, or yeah, that's where a wireframe is, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
So we wanted to, so we did, okay.
What were you trying to learn or achieve? And I'll put this example up here. This is a good one. This is also with usability tests. So check this one out and think about how you might apply this to be a little bit more specific than we did a usability test of the commenting feature.
Yeah,
If you're
also
not
there's
sure,
from last week, Joe, one of the great tips that kind of stuck with me from Cola when we were talking about writing the resume is that possibly, whoever is going to look at your portfolio and resumes and all that is not going to be technical people that understand what you're talking about, just like what you were saying at the beginning of your presentation. It's just like you have to really make it digestible to people that are non-technical as well. So like if you say I carried out a user testing, it might just go over their heads because they don't know what that means.
totally. Yeah, and you're going to get a variety of people who and their experience levels with design who look at your case studies. But Cola is really on the same page with me, and I'm sure with you, Claudia, too, of like, especially with a portfolio resume, it's just a person who's looking at your case study, right? They're not, it's a person who is looking at a lot of case studies and they have the same like it's not even if they're an expert in design, right? They're not going to be able to jump into that and have a strong idea of what you're talking about, especially if they're a hiring manager who isn't doesn't have a design background. And I think a lot of junior designers want to kind of boost up the amount of vocabulary and language and like stuff in there to make it more impressive, when really that kind of has the opposite effect of just making it confusing or unclear. Um, and there might be designers who disagree with me about that, but I think in my experience, always the ones that are more straightforward, simple, and recognize that not everyone has understands the project or has a background in design is going to those ones are going to be more effective.
Hmm.
We got some good answers in the chat here. We wanted to, let's
Yeah, let's
see,
highlight
Ashley's
them.
got, we wanted to understand how effective and functional the comment feature was for design professionals. Awesome. So we conducted an initial A/B test under a series of criteria for 10 to 15 users over Zoom. Ashley, nice answer here. To document their overall responses, we requested that they add their comments in the attached survey at the end of the test. Very thorough and 1,000 times better than what we had over here. And I'm seeing some other good ones in the chat as well. Here's what I came up with for it. We wanted to see if users could easily and effectively leave comments, assign tasks, and collaborate on floor plans using the commenting feature. We ran 10 usability tests or tests with 10 users, observing them complete a series of tasks related to leaving feedback and responding to comments. And I know since we're making this up, we all got some different ideas on this one and are making some assumptions. But some of the ones I'm seeing in the chat, Tori, great answer here. Ashley, excellent. Rue, really good. These are all going to be, even though they're not
And
super
fun.
lengthy or descriptive, they're going to be way more effective than showing this. And they're totally going to change the look and feel of your case studies from feeling kind of junior and like a lot of fluff in there, really, to actually talking about your problem solving ability and why you did the things you did to get to a better project. Yeah, great answers, everyone. I know that one was a little longer and maybe a little trickier, but really good stuff in there. So we're going to get to one more in a second, but takeaways for this one, if you're seeing that you have the bootcamp book report checklist kind of style in your case study, go section by section. Look at how you're introducing research, user flows, sketches. And if you're seeing stuff like this, that's really vague and general and could kind of apply to any project, and we can send these slides out as well, but take a look back at some of these examples and see if you can go a step further and talk about the why. Why did you choose to do this method to get you to the next steps or advance the development of your product? All right, so let me get to our last one here, which is an important one. We're not going to do an exercise for this, but I thought it was definitely one we want to mention here. So takeaway overload, I'd say, is the biggest other mistake that I see in portfolios. And I would say this is the one that answers that question that has popped up quite a bit about the length of your case study, right? Or I'd say more specifically, striking the balance between a case study that's easy to read, engaging, not doesn't feel like a research paper, but that is also complete and showing all of your work. So if you can do this and take some of these tips into practice, this is going to go a really long way um, to creating that cohesiveness, telling a story, right? And creating a portfolio piece that's enjoyable and engaging for someone to read, but is not lacking on any of the details. Basically for this, we're talking about for each section, for each part of the process, what are the key highlights or takeaways from this part of the process? So for example, if you did, usability tests, like the example we just gave, what were the biggest things that you learned in that usability test? If there were interviews that you did, what were the most important themes that came out of it? Now, this is something that a lot of designers already do in their case studies. But one of the common mistakes with this is takeaway overload. Basically, you're this person here with all 1,000 post-its on them, right? And talking about all the things that you did. You see this like
Looks
we
like
did
my daily
interviews, and here's what we
outfit.
learned from our interviews. Sorry, go ahead, Claudia.
It looks like my daily outfit.
That's your daily outfit. Yeah, yeah. Those are
before I
really
before
pink
I
post-its all over.
y- before I come to do the streams, that's how I look.
Yeah, yeah. You get ready for your. We need a custom Gather Town outfit full of post-its. Um, this is what it looks like, right? Where you're saying, okay, we did interviews and here's what we learned. And then it is an endless checklist of stuff that came out of your interviews. Or we did a usability test. Here's what we found out. And it's 500 bullet points about everything that happened in your usability tests. This is not to say that those things didn't happen or that they're not important or didn't help you advance to the next stages of your project. But in terms of a portfolio, if you're showing everything, right? If you're showing every single thing that came out of your interviews, it's going to be distracting for your reader. And it's going to kind of have the opposite effect where they don't know what to focus on or what really were the key takeaways that led to the next steps or the design decisions you made on your project. So when we're talking about doing takeaways, right? For any section, we did this, we did interviews, we did sketching. Here's what came out of it, right? We want to try to limit those to a few, right? Really cut it down to the big takeaways and not list a million bullet points that are going to kind of cause some of those more important things to blend in. So for our key takeaways, we're going for 1 to 3 big things that came out of that part of the process. These could be highlights, solutions, next steps. You did your user flow. What were the 3 big things that you discovered or design decisions that you made coming out of it? These can change depending on what you're talking about, but the idea is to keep them simple, limit it to a few, and focus on the things that really most impacted your design and solution going forward. This is the case study I use as an example in our portfolio class. By the way, I know we're at time, but I just got a couple more minutes here.
Sure.
Um, and in this one, I'm outlining our research and interviews. So kind of this is our intro that we talked about. I'm talking about why we did it. I'm showing my interview plan and script. And then down here, I'm talking about the key takeaways from our interview. This was for an online therapy app that I worked on. And I really did do all of these interviews. It was, lots of hours of recordings and transcripts and stuff like that. But still in the case study, I'm able to cut it down to the 3 biggest themes from those interviews. Not everyone needs therapy, but everyone needs someone to talk to, and a little description of that theme. People want a balance of a personal and a professional connection with the trained listener or therapist that they're talking to. And people valued talking to someone who's been there. Maybe even if they're not a specialist or an expert on the topic, they have a shared life experience. We heard this come up a lot with addiction, right? They might not necessarily need to talk to an addiction specialist about it, but they value talking to someone who's maybe had that experience or overcome that experience in their life. And you can imagine, like with all these interviews, hundreds of hours of recordings, I learned way more than 3 things, right? These were not the only 3 things that came out of those interviews, but for the case of a case study and a portfolio, these were the ones that were the most important and the ones that really changed the design and influenced the design decisions that we made going forward. So with your own portfolios, when you're talking about a section like research or down here competitive analysis and you're documenting the stuff that you did and then finally getting to what you learned from it or what came out of that, the goal here is to cut it down to, I'd say 3 is really the sweet spot. Key takeaways that are not going to be everything, but they're going to be bold, they're easy to grasp for an outside reader, and they're going to be easy to connect to future design decisions that you made. This is really the answer to being able to get that balance of a complete portfolio project, but also one that's not dense or difficult to read through or time consuming, where your reader's going to lose interest. So a couple key takeaways for the process, and I think going with the theme, cutting down on listing everything and showing everything you did, and really trying to talk about the most important ones, the one that you want every reader to understand and see and not miss before they go on to see some of the next parts of your process. All right, so I have some examples of those here, and that's something you can look at in your own case studies. This is something we spend a lot of time on in our full day workshop, but I wanted to mention it and give some examples here that you can check out and apply to your own. All right, so let me do, if anyone has questions, if you want to
Yeah,
put them in the chat,
should we open a
I'll get to a
quick
few.
Q&A? Yeah, awesome.
I'm going to, Buddy, do you mind if I just do, yeah, let's do a couple questions and then I'll get to like a 1 minute wrap up.
Of course, of
So
course.
yeah,
Let's open
I
up.
know there's a ton
Whoa.
of portfolio questions, but I'll try to get to get to a few
I just
and give
put
you a
the
chance to
screen
ask them after I
down.
kind of
I
feel.
just put the screen down and I just opened up the room to the gather and there's a wave of people in here. That's amazing. Welcome everyone. Sorry if I didn't say hi. I didn't see you there. Awesome. Let's open up our Q&A and I'm gonna sprinkle you with some confetti because you've been awesome. All right, as per usual, people, if you do have a question, you can see all the emojis at the bottom of your gather town, and there's a white hand that you can use to raise your hand if you do have a question, which looks like this. So if you do have a question, either put your hand up or write it in the chat. We'll ask it for you. All right, chat. That's Joe. All right, partial case study. I think I did see a question in the chat from Ashley earlier on. Oh yeah, related to the case studies, the exercise that we were doing, what can be used instead of we if we're currently working by ourselves? Or is the we, does that include the stakeholders?
Th- This is a question I get so often about like we versus I, and to be honest, I don't really understand why it throws people for a loop so much. I just say I for the things that I solely worked on, and we for things that I collaborated with other people on or other designers. I think the only rule for that is obviously don't claim that you designed, single-handedly something that you didn't, that someone else did. But design work is collaborative, so there's no, and it's important to show that collaboration. So the I and we thing, I just like not, I think a lot of designers overthink it in their portfolio. Just say I for the stuff that you did as a, solo, and we including, any collaborators. Um, I think overall it doesn't really matter that much. And especially if it's uh, as long as you're not taking credit for something that someone else like literally did on their own and saying we. But you work in teams. People do like different parts of the project. So if you did it yourself, take credit for it. If you worked on it with someone else, use we. All right, I see another question from Sam in the chat here. A lot of bootcamp projects have you create a new app with different features, which would lead to a pretty hefty case study. Would you recommend breaking it into different parts or keeping it all together and just present the main takeaways from research, design, and usability testing? Yeah, I would say you want to, uh, well, it depends on the project, right? But I would say keeping it all together and maybe saying like the main, I think if you can do those key takeaways like the way that I listed it, that's going to help you show it all as one project without it being too dense or too much going on there. I think there are some projects where you might say like, okay, here are some of the features that we focused on, and maybe breaking those out a little bit more. But overall, my overall advice for that would be to keep it as clear as possible. And a mistake, and I guess the fourth mistake I'll talk about is seeing designers who talk about every twist and turn. Like, and then our stakeholders wanted to change something, and then we had to go back and do more research. And it just gets kind of confusing to follow, right? So I would recommend if you can do it as one, like all together, right? This was your case study. Here's what we focused on. Here are a couple highlights of features that we did, um, and try to keep that story as like concise as possible without like changing gears too much throughout it. I could probably give better feedback if I knew the case study or had more specific questions, but overall, I'd say try to keep it all together. Um, Keep it simple.
We've got a
Okay,
couple
Yasmin,
more.
let me answer yours.
Yeah, I think we have one from
Uh,
LinkedIn as well, if you want me to pull
I'll
it
answer
up.
that if you can read it to
Yeah,
me.
let me find it. I saw it. Mm-mm-mm. Or let me get the one from YouTube from Seung. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, Seung. They say, thanks both. If you worked on your project with other designers, how do you approach telling your case study or portfolio? I guess it's similar to the question that we just answered. Like, do you say that you've been working in a team or as a solo? How would you approach that?
Same answer to before. Talk about the things that you did solo. Don't say I designed this if someone else did it. And saying we and talking about collaborators is a good thing, right? You're collaborating with other designers all the time. It's a skill. It's a thing that companies are going to be looking for. So there's no downside to like it's rarely a project that you're working on completely on your own, right? So that's um, same answer to that one.
Hmm. Brilliant. And I think I saw someone else here in the chat that Fluxies. Hi, Joe. Can you give an example of when and how to use user journeys? Is this tool only ideal for new products or features?
Yeah, user journey is a very uh, flexible, method or deliverable. Basically, you want to use a user journey. It's not just for new project products or features. In fact, a lot of times user journeys are used to evaluate a current product and see, okay, where is the user having a good experience in this process? Where are they having a bad experience, frustration, a dip in this process? So you can really use it across the board. I think it's easier actually to use it on an existing product because you can actually figure out you have something and you maybe have data or research or testing to understand where people are at different parts in the process. So, a customer journey map, if you're creating or redesigning a car buying website, right? You would want to test it out and see and create a user journey map that shows the process from, okay, I need a new car and I'm going to look and do some browsing online, all the way to that end process of buying or leasing a new car and seeing some of the ups and downs in that. And you could do that without an existing product and just kind of learn how people, the stages of that process and where you could improve it. Or you could use that with an existing site and kind of see how they use your website to shop for a car and some of the um, different peaks and valleys within that.
Brilliant. I think I might have I seen them all? Let me see. I'm just scrolling through the secret promo codes. Uh, oh, Jasmine, did we answer Jasmine's question? It's a little bit difficult to make a case study when we are working on fake projects. I'm trying to do the real steps, even if it's not a real project, but I don't think that the results are good enough or accurate. Is it normal? So I guess, like, would you say it's the same working on a fake project or a real project when creating a case study?
Yeah, I think this is something we talk about in a lot of our classes, but in the one day portfolio class, which is being able to show outcomes even when you're not working on a real project, right? If you work for Amazon and you're a designer, you can say, we did this and our orders increased by 20%. And it's easy to show the actual outcome improvements of your design. And when you're working on a bootcamp project, passion project, something you're making up, it can feel a little bit harder to do that if it's not live on the internet. But there are ways to evaluate the outcome of the project and to try to make it as realistic as possible. And an example of that would be if you're redesigning something, right? Creating a survey for the before version of how easy was it to book your flight and a survey for the after version and being able to compare those. It might not feel as impressive as saying we increased, by 2 million orders a month if you're working for a major company that has a live site, but it's still an effective way to show that your design had an impact and actually, especially in your portfolio, showing that you were able to um, create a tangible improvement for it. So fake projects can still be really effective, right? It's not just like paid client work is the only thing that's ever going to get you to the next level. And you want to stick to the real steps for sure. So I think that's good. Um, it's okay to not have all of the details, not have everything that you would have in a professional or a on the job, let's say, case study. Um, but there are some ways to still show that impact, even if it's not a big number, that are going to be useful for a hiring manager to say, okay, this designer actually made an improvement on this, and I can see why and how they did.
Hmm. Brilliant.
Uh,
I think I think we covered everyone. Apologies if we haven't, but if we haven't, you can connect with me on LinkedIn or with Joe on LinkedIn as well. I'm gonna
yeah,
share his profile, so feel free to send. Where's the camera? Send any questions you might have. And
yep,
obviously in our Discord if you're part of our Fluxys community, which if you aren't, then you should. All right, over to
agreed.
you and the 1 minute wrap up.
Super quick. I'm hoping that everyone here enjoyed this workshop and that our hour 15 went by pretty quickly, especially talking about portfolio stuff, which, as I said, isn't the most fun thing in the world. More importantly, what I say at the end of every workshop is that I hope you're feeling a little bit more clear and confident about your portfolio than you were an hour ago. Um, this is not everything that we covered today, but I really wanted to give you some actionable tips, little things that you can go back and find in your case studies and make some improvements to, that are going to get you one step closer from the portfolio being this big scary mountain that you have to climb, and turning that into something that's a little bit more straightforward and simple. Um, so I'm glad to see some good feedback in the chat. Finally, last thing, we have some upcoming workshops. This one is on Friday, and I'm going to share the. Let me make my window a little bigger here. This workshop is not related to portfolios, but you're going to create a really good portfolio project in this one. This workshop, UI prototyping and animation, this is all day on Friday, and we have a couple upcoming dates for this one. And this is the most fun I've had besides today teaching a workshop when we launched this one a couple weeks ago. If you want to learn how to go beyond like basic, Figma prototyping and do some really cool micro animations, interactions, like make a huge level up to your designs in a day, you should definitely join this class. Animation and prototyping is something that I did professionally. Most of the projects I got hired for were related. I was doing exactly what we're doing in this workshop. And in terms of portfolio, you're going to create a project that really stands out and shows some skills that will definitely separate your case studies from other junior designers and bootcamp grads and people out there who are just getting started. So if you want to make some really cool stuff and learn how to bring your designs to life, hopefully you'll join us on Friday, and we have the discount code that same discount code that Tom put in there as well. And then finally, the last upcoming workshop is the one I've been mentioning, create a standout UX portfolio. This one's coming up. We got a couple dates here. One is on Saturday, December 16th, and the other's Friday, February 2nd. So both full day workshops. If this was helpful here today, we've covered this for an hour, and I kind of gave you the high level but hopefully helpful stuff. This is a full day class. You work on your own portfolio. So I walk you through all of this stuff step by step. I give you templates, feedback. It's a small class. If you are struggling with your portfolio, join this class and you will leave feeling 1,000 times better than it, with some really great improvements to it. So we got that one coming up too, and we do it on a Friday. So you leave Friday afternoon with like a huge burden off of your back of work, needing to get that portfolio in good shape. All right, that is all I got, everybody. All those links and promo codes and whatnot are in the chat. Claudia, thank you so much, and thank you everyone for the participation and great questions and stuff, and for joining to hopefully make some oh, I like the confetti. That's nice. Make some big improvements on your portfolio. So we'll include the recording and send that out. And Yeah, thanks again, everyone. Hopefully, I'll see you again soon, either here or in one of our upcoming classes that we got coming.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, this is quite sad. This is our last event. It's been an absolute pleasure to have this collaboration with you guys. And maybe it's not the last time that we do something together. I'm sure it won't be. So thank you so much for taking the
Definitely not.
time, just like to be with us for a full month and just like for Kola as well, for her to come and Tom, who's been here like with a go-kart scooting around the space, which was super
Yep.
fun, but super helpful as well. I mean, I loved having you guys. We all loved your events and we surely learned a whole lot from them. So thank you so much for those.
Awesome.
And let me know, for any future workshops that will come up and I'll be sharing them in the community. And yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you and to meet you, Joe.
You too, Claudia. This is not our last one. As long as you'll have us back, we'll get some more on the board because I've had a really good time.
Absolutely.
Um, Thanks so much,
Absolutely.
everybody. Have a great day, and Claudia, thanks again. We'll catch up soon.
Take care. Take care. And for Fluxies, for anyone here, next Wednesday, we are changing the topic. We are talking about AI. And so our guest will be showing us how to use AI as a creative co-pilot. So we have to drop the AI bomb before the end of the year. So it's very hot event coming up. And so I'll be sharing more info in the upcoming week as well. And Joe, if you want to come, you're invited.
I could learn a thing or two about AI. That sounds good.
All right. Well, take care, everyone, and I'll see you in our Discord or around. And yeah, stay safe.
Thanks, everybody. Bye, Claudia.
Bye bye.